Progress always. It's a way of life. And today, Coach Mycal Anders tells us all about it on Equal Matters. Mike, I appreciate you being here. My name is Rob Hunter, former talk show host, now doing this podcast called Equal Matters, because I think really that mantra of progress always is so important as we have to progress and we have to grow. But Mike, before we get into you, because I want to know all about you, you're a Marine, you're a performance coach, but I want to start you with a heavy hitting question. What is the best advice you give someone about life?
So, man, that's a really good question. Uh, I think, you know, from a context standpoint, it depends on who you're talking to. But I think from where I stand and the work that we do at Next Level, a solid place to start, regardless of what phase of life you're in, is to take it for a test drive. You whatever your aspirational self desires, reach out, touch it, taste it, see what it feels like, find a way to experience it before you put all the pieces in place and start heading in that direction. Because what I found in the work that we do, there's a lot of not necessarily unwinding, but there are people that have chased what I like to call false idols. And they reach this mountaintop only to realize that, damn, this isn't exactly what I thought I wanted, and or they left a piece of themselves behind in the process.
Mm.
So what's really important, whether you're in your 20s and don't know nothing about nothing, or or you're in your 50s and have that feeling like, I should have been someplace by now, or I know there's more, go take it for a test drive. Go stand in that 6,000 square foot house and see if that's what you actually want.
Mm.
Take the Lambo for a test drive, and maybe you realize that, it's okay to just want the pickup truck, and that's not actually settling, right? These are all the mind games that we play with ourselves because we don't actually know. And if you give yourself the opportunity to take life for a test drive, splurge on first class and see if that's really your thing. Or maybe it's like, you know what, this is really an unnecessary expense for me, and like coach is more than okay. Or you you upgrade that one time and there's no looking back.
Hmm.
But now you're living with a higher degree of certainty that you otherwise wouldn't have. So that's the long way of saying, if I could give anybody any advice for any at any point in their life, take whatever comes next for a test drive.
And I love that. And the reason why I wanted to ask you that is because Mike is a coach, Coach Derz. You can find him on Instagram at Coach Derz. He is the founder of Next Level Performance Consulting. And this is really designed to take you to your next performance level. And I think that trying things, Mike, is really so tantamount because life is an adventure. It's a journey in which you get to determine your own fate. I think so many of us, we grow up and we get these rules that are inherited to us, programming, it's often called, where maybe it's your parents, your aunts and uncles, maybe it's your neighborhood, gives you an idea on how to live. And
Mhm.
so many of us just take that idea that we get at 7, 8, 9, 10, and we just live like that for the rest of our lives. So, in the people that you coach and the people that you work with at Next Level,
Mhm.
do you find that that is part of the process? Is shaking loose some of the things from your past, or as Yoda would say, you must unlearn what you have learned.
100%. There is a high degree of unlearning and reframing that takes place in our process with our clients. And a great place to start is working through somebody's internal monologue. Why do you talk to yourself like that? Is that actually something that you believe and own for yourself? And in answering that question, there's a level of introspection that is required to take place to answer it honestly. And when you do that, you create an opportunity to look at disconfirming information. Where is that belief system not true? Where is that limiting belief invalidated? And then you can begin to unpack and unlearn so that you can relearn the empowering beliefs, the habits, behaviors, and patterns that serve your aspirational self and allow you to really move forward with that certainty that we opened up with.
And that's that big key. So let's rewind your clock, Mike.
Yeah.
Certainty. Sometimes it's hard to find.
Yeah.
What is your journey of certainty like? I know you were a Marine for a
So
while.
so here's the thing about certainty. And I know I'm gonna sound um not counterintuitive, hypocritical here. Uh you have to be okay with it not looking the way that you wanted it to. You thought the way that you thought it would. Okay. And what I mean by that is when I was 16, my dad asked me, son, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do with your life? And at 16, it's really hard to look very far past high school, let alone college. And I knew three things for myself. I wanted to play Division I football. I wanted to finish a degree, and I wanted to serve as an officer in the armed forces.
Mm.
Okay. Fast forward my senior year of high school, the Air Force Academy comes calling. And from the outside looking in, that's those three things wrapped up in a neat little bow. And the path is paved. It,
Easy.
it, it doesn't get any more certain than that. And also, there's a certain level of maturity and awareness that I did not have because both my parents were career military. My dad served 20 years to the day in the Vietnam era in the Air Force. And on the back end of his career, my mom was starting hers, and they rode her 26-year career for my entire childhood. I graduated high school in 2002. She retired in 2005. And growing up in an active duty household, when I got to the academy, I was not mature enough to just be present with the process that was unfolding before me. And I just kept judging it against what I had witnessed in my mom on active duty. And I could not connect those dots. What I perceived at the time was this Lord of the Flies environment of kids leading kids, and the untruth that this is not active duty. So I started just going through the motions and inevitably cheated on a test and got myself kicked out of school.
Mm.
Now, clarity, right? I got to play D1. I checked that box, even though it was an earlier exit than I wanted it to be.
But still, what position did you play?
I was a strong safety and outside linebacker.
Strong safety, outside linebacker. Those two
You,
positions have kind of merged together in the last few
yeah, well,
years.
I was I was a hybrid guy. Like I wasn't fast enough to cover deep, and I wasn't big enough to just straight up fill gaps. But I could cover ground side to side, and I was good enough to take guys out of the backfield. So they found a spot for me in that rover hybrid position. I'm not afraid to get my nose dirty, but if I'm covering go routes all game long, it's going to be a very short season for me. So I transferred down to East Texas State, Texas A&M Commerce, and finished my degree, box number 2. And that's 2006. The day after Christmas 2007, I get notified by my recruiter that I check into officer candidate school for the Marine Corps January 18th, 2008. So that's a very long-winded way of telling you that I had all of that clarity and I ended up checking those 3 boxes, but it did not unfold and I didn't get there in any way, shape, or form in the way that I thought it was going to.
And I love that lesson because it's so important for me too. Because at 16, same age you were when you start having your checklist, I knew that I wanted to go host a hip hop radio show at the college I wanted to go to. It was like my
Mhm.
driving light. That's the one thing I wanted to do. And I went and accomplished that. And as I was getting that degree, I'm like, okay, I want to be a radio show host. At first, I wanted to be a hip hop DJ. And then I understood that there aren't many commercial radio stations that play the hip hop that I like. So
Mm.
that's out. Plus, music radio is very limiting creatively. You don't often get to have as much fun behind the mic as you might as a talk show host. So I found that, and then I just wanted to be a talk show host, but I had to move to 6 different states to try to find that path. I would
Sure.
have predicted, oh, I just would have stayed home in the Boston area, become a talk show host, and just lived in Boston. That would have been fine. It turned out to be Phoenix became home because you have to be willing to let go
Mhm.
some of the parts, because if you just and see if you can vibe with this, Mike, in that if you just kind of flow, you take your life lessons and you apply that to the flow that your life has,
Yeah.
you can end up where you want to be, just like as you said, maybe not the exact way or the exact place you want to be.
You know, we like to make plans in straight lines, but that's not how we live life,
True.
you know? Yeah.
So in the Marines,
Mhm.
you're in officer candidate school. It's
Yeah.
2008.
Mhm.
What are you thinking at the time? So, is there a moment when you become a Marine and you go and you sign up and you get there and you're like, "Uh, what am I doing here?"
So that's really funny that you asked that question that way. So December 26th, 2007, my recruiter calls me and says, "Hey, we got you a slot. You check in January." Now, 2 months before that, I was living in Dallas. I had just built my six-figure training practice at Gold's Gym, and I burned it all to the ground to go do this Marine thing. And
And what's the starting wage of a Marine? 18,000, something like that?
what was I making? I was not making six figures out the
Yeah.
gate. That's for sure. And I remember, well, after I got notified, we drove. I was at my mom's place in Nashville, heading east, and my brother was playing at Alabama at the time, and they had pulled Oklahoma State in the Independence Bowl in Shreveport.
Mm.
So New Year's Eve, 2007, they play in the Independence Bowl. They win. We go out to the casinos, have a good old time, get back to the hotel. And my dad went to sleep and never woke up.
Wow.
So 2 weeks later, we're burying him in Omaha, Nebraska, and I'm listening to uh, my mom cry herself to sleep night after night, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm okay. I can. I don't need to do this Marine thing. I can just stay in Nashville. I can set up shop here. All of my stuff, all of my worldly possessions are in the back of my truck. I can just stay. And I had that conversation with my mom. I was like, look, maybe this is a really tragic and unfortunate sign, but maybe I'm supposed to stay here. And she says to me, you need to go.
Mm.
You need to see this all the way through. And that as I sit here now talking to you as a father, I thought my mom was a strong woman back then. Like, I know she's a strong woman now. Like, that's the selfless shit in parenting that they talk about, you know. And I celebrate her for not hanging on to me when I'm sure in, that moment of self-preservation and, like, against her own self-interest, she pushed me towards my dream, right?
Mhm.
And still, I get to the gate, and this is where it gets funny in direct answer to your question. Orders in hand. We are in Afghanistan, we're in Iraq, ThreatCon Alpha, guards at the gate at the ready. I pull off to the side of the road at the gate, dude. Okay. At the gate. I'm looking at the gate guard. The gate guard's looking at me. I'm like, I had this flashback. I went to 18 days of boot camp to get into the Air Force Academy prep school. I went to 6 weeks of boot camp after prep school for the academy. And now officer candidate school for the Marine Corps is 10 weeks. This is not only my third entry level program, Rob, they keep getting longer.
Mhm.
And I'm like, fuck. Do do I do I want do I really want to do this again? And it was a real gut check moment for me. And I remembered that a teammate of mine from the academy who also left early came through OCS the summer before. So I called him and I asked him, Billy Norris, I'll never forget this conversation. This is why it's so important to have people that call you on your bullshit in your life. Because when you're second guessing yourself, they will hold you accountable to your goals and keep you on the straight and narrow, talk you back off the cliff. And I said, hey man, I know you just got done with this. Knowing what you know now. And I set the scene just like I set it up for you. I'm here. Well, I don't know. And he tells me, he's like, look, man, I've only been in, I've only got 6 months under my belt. So to be honest with you, I don't know. All I do know though is you will regret it for the rest of your life if you don't. And I took that deep breath, handed my orders to that gate guard. He waved me on through, and the rest is history.
Is it like one of those movie things where the gate closes and you look back and you're like, well, guess I'm
Dude,
here
you know what? I sincerely wish life worked like that.
now.
I have had moments like that at that level multiple times in my life, and not once did the credits roll, the confetti fall, the music play, and I'm just like, just one. Like I really hope that's what death is like. Honestly, when I die, I really hope credits roll, confetti falls, and music plays. Cause like that's got to be it,
Yeah.
you know?
Living a full life should
Cause,
come
'cause,
with a
like
reward.
in the evolution of my life, like as one version of me dies and I step into this new, better version of me, like that, those are the moments where like the movie's over, and now we're in the sequel and
Yes.
part 3, part 4, part 42, and I'm like, never. Not once.
Well, we could change that. So now here's an interesting offshoot question, Coach Derz. What song do you want to be played at that moment? Because I know my song. I got my funeral song already planned out.
Oh, dude, you know what? Uh, that's a great question. And the only thing that comes up for me right here, right now, and maybe it's just because I just heard it this morning. I would love the intro to Top Gun to play when I die.
Oh, that's actually knowing you. That's perfect for you.
The bells.
Yes.
That's what I want, dude. The bells and the electric guitar. I think that would be epic.
I agree. That's living a soaring life right there, right? That's that I went for it. I went for the high achievement. That's what that song means. My fraternity class, shout out to Phi Alpha Tau, Emerson College. My class was the Top Gun class. So when we crossed over, they played that song for us. It's a pretty cool moment. It was like
That's awesome.
sunrise.
Yeah.
It set the scene very well.
That's
My
awesome.
song is Outkast Spody Odie Dopalicious.
Come on.
Yep. It's a song about what you're just talking about, Mike. It's moments in life. Like each of the
Mhm.
3 verses in that song are all different, and they all point to a moment that each one of the lyricists has.
Yeah.
And I think about life that way, that same way that you did. You hand your orders in to the guard gate and you drive in and you know that you've made a decision to put your life in this direction for now.
Yeah.
This is 2008 for you.
Mhm.
But this is 16 years ago.
Yeah.
And you look back at that moment and
Mhm.
how it's led you to here as you sit. There's a sign that says Progress Always, which is the name of your podcast.
Mhm.
And it's kind of your mantra for next level performance consulting.
Yes.
So take me from 2008, that Marine experience. You were
Yeah.
deployed to.
Mhm.
Take all of
2010.
that, 2007. So you were deployed one time,
Yeah, once in 2010.
and
Mhm.
you went to Afghanistan or Iraq?
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan.
Mhm.
Where in
Yeah.
Afghanistan were you?
We were in the Helmand province for the front half, and then set up shop up in the hinterlands of Sangin after that to finish it
Y-
out.
You were away from home consistently in Afghanistan for how
Mhm.
long?
7 months.
How does that shape you when you're going through that? I know you're there with other people, but you're
Yeah.
an officer, so you're
Yeah.
leading the charge.
Mhm. Regardless of your political leanings and all that kind of good stuff, and I definitely have my own thoughts on the conflict and Operation Enduring Freedom and all that stuff. When you get boots on the ground, here's the brass tacks of it all, and these are the things that all the talking heads ignore. We showed up on that outpost with 16 civilian contractors and 14 Marines. My sole purpose in life at that point is to come home with 16 civilian contractors and 14 Marines. The rest doesn't matter. And if that's an uncomfortable point of view, I'm okay with it.
You're the one that lived it.
Yeah. But you said, how does it shape you? Beyond that, my deployment experience was awesome. It was 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week for 7 months straight. Not that part's not particularly awesome, but it's Groundhog Day. The operation is the operation, the mission is the mission, the shift is the shift. The zeros, there's one more zero in my bank account. I was single at the time, no family, no wife, no kids, no obligations. And at that point in my life, it was everything I wanted it to be. And it equipped me with the capacity and the way of thinking that has served me so well in entrepreneurship. In that you work until the work is done. The clock is irrelevant. And I'm able to this is how I describe my work capacity and my ability to manage stress. My 50% is most people's 100.
Mm.
And that makes for some rough dealings, sometimes. And there's definitely some growing that I've had to do in terms of uh inadvertently judging people to that standard. So I've had to do a lot of self development on meeting people where they're at and not trying to expedite where they're at and bringing them up to where I am. And I don't say that from a judgmental perspective, or to dismiss anybody that doesn't operate at that capacity. But yeah, that's how it shaped me. Those are the things that I took from that experience that I continue to leverage.
when is too much? 12 hours a day, 7
Mhm.
days a week for 7 months, and
Mhm.
our friend Coach Adam Nail, who you've had on
Yeah.
Progress Always, his similar story. He was also
Mhm.
Marine, and he talks about 12-hour days, 7 days a week. He
Yeah.
worked on oil rigs, 12-hour
Mhm.
days,
Yeah.
7 days a week. That, to me, in certain situations
Mhm.
sounds okay, because I certainly had radio portions where I did something very similar,
Sure.
different work,
Mhm.
but it's grueling, it's a grind,
Yeah.
because part of what you do at Next Level Performance Consulting is take people who have that mentality and help
Mhm.
them really get in touch with themselves again. So,
Yeah.
as part of you coming out of the Marines,
Mhm.
going to get, more education, your personal trainer, and now building up, your business,
Yeah.
how do you take that where you're at? Your 50% is 100%,
Mhm.
where you say, "Okay, we're gonna get you to be in a similar place where whatever your 100% is, it's now gonna be 200% of what
Yeah.
you thought." Because
Mhm.
that seems to be that goal, is that so your mind stays okay, your body stays okay so that you
Yeah.
can push through.
Well, so here's the other thing. There's what I did with the other 12 hours is what I spend a lot of my time teaching our clients. All right. So, yeah, you've been on shift managing and leading UAV operations for the last 12 hours. And I was on the midnight to noon shift. So I never saw the sun go down and I always watched it come up. And the lather, rinse, and repeat of it all was you get off shift, you get something to eat, you take a nap, you wake up, you go work out, you eat again, you get back to bed, and then you're back on mission, right? And the critical element to that second 12 hours is I was taking care of Mycal. I was
Mhm.
doing what Mycal needed to do to make sure that I was mission capable and mission effective for that next 12-hour shift. So, for any leader, let alone an entrepreneur or business leader or thought leader in their respective niche, the critical piece is making sure that you are still built into the empire that you're building.
Mm.
And that's where people tend to mess it up. They focus on what's being built and the tribe that supports that initiative and making sure that they're happy and taken care of and getting their needs met. And a lot of times it's to their own detriment. In the healthcare space, it's very akin to what we would typify as uh, caretaker syndrome. I'm going to make sure everybody else is good and whatever's left, however little that may be, I'm going to try and take care of me. And it's an exercise in futility over the long term. So the exercise then becomes, where do I fit? What things do I need to let go of? And simply said, harder to put into practice. But what do I need to let go of, or what do I need to move around so that I fit back in my own life? And when you plug yourself back in with intentionality, well, then the 12, 14, 16-hour days, those sprints, because you definitely can't do it forever,
Mm-mm.
but you're able to do what needs to be done for as long as it takes to get it done, because you're making sure that your cup is full or as full as possible the whole way. And when that becomes non-negotiable, it doesn't matter what gets thrown at you. And even if you have to let it go for a short period of time, clarity, you know that this is something that I need to sprint to and through. And on the other side of that sprint, boom, I'm plugged right back in.
Huge. So, for me, I didn't really pay attention to myself fully until the age of 39. So for me, this is coming up on 6 years ago.
Mhm.
'Cause, you live life a certain way. So I've been diagnosed with depression twice. I don't really look at it now as that term because it's such a heavy term and you want to talk about letting it go. I had to let that go that, I'm not depressed anymore. I was,
Mhm.
but I didn't know you could do certain things with your own mind. I didn't know
Yeah.
that you could reframe things. I was under the impression that the things that popped in your head, the critical voice that you have about yourself is accurate, is true. Why
Yeah.
would you question yourself?
Mhm.
Until I heard this phrase, your thoughts are not your own. And I was like, what does that mean? And
Mhm.
Mike, how I interpreted that was just that is it might be based on my 7-year-old self's interpretation of something that I'm still applying here at
Yeah.
39, 32 years later. So
Mhm.
that was enough for me to start to at least pause when those thoughts would come in. And I'm a
Yeah.
communications expert. And one of the things communication coaches never really talk about, is kind of like what you're saying, Mike, is that conversation you have with yourself, that
Dude.
inner monologue,
Yeah.
monologue. That's the most important part of your
Mhm.
belief system. So, but once I decided, huh, okay, I can change those thoughts or reframe them,
Yep.
then I was able to take time for myself and really figure out what bothers me, what pisses me off,
Mhm.
what frustrates me. And then when I could feel those emotions and realize I was communicating very ineffectively through them,
Yeah.
as we mentioned, Mike and I had we got together a few weeks ago, and I told him that wife and I had a date. Mrs. H and I went on a date. It was a great date, but somewhere along the line, I got a little upset about something and
Mhm.
didn't communicate effectively. And it's like those moments where you can look back and go, okay, let me dig into this.
Yeah.
Is that the time that you're talking about? Because just for me, coach, that's the best time investment I've ever given myself. It wasn't about money, it wasn't about Lamborghinis, first class. It was just about me. And
Mhm.
I'm so glad that I did that work because I have such a better understanding of me
Yeah.
than I had before.
Sure. So, yeah, sometimes the best time is the least convenient time.
Yes.
Yeah, that sucks sometimes, and still there is great utility in just calling it what it is, and in the moment or the very near aftermath of that moment, it's like, "Damn, where did I lose it?" And just start peeling back to work, because here's the deal, this happens on the back end of a workout. This happens, in, uh, long drives, when you're traversing, the Sonoran Desert on your way to San Diego. You have these moments of catharsis where you've run out of the superficial to think about, and your subconscious takes over. And if you get hip to this happening, you will find considerable value in these moments and sit in that space. It's kind of like when you wake up from a dream and you try to fall back asleep and
Mm,
catch the dream again, right? But imagine that while you're awake, and you can actually process in real time what your subconscious is actually telling you.
mm,
That often, it's either in moments of steady state catharsis, or in the peak state of emotion that shows up, right? And language is so powerful, not only in me communicating with you and vice versa, but also in me communicating with me.
mm.
For example, I'm sitting with a client one day, and I prefaced the story I'm about to tell you with, "Look, you're not going to like what I'm about to tell you, but I feel like this is going to land and create a moment for us to actually move the needle." And I make this observation that anytime that they've sniffed, got a glimpse, put a toe over the precipice of their own greatness, a viral post, a the uh, highest grossing month revenue wise. Um, the impact they've had with uh, a conversation or guidance that they've given somebody, and they've come back with the accolades that they've just received based on that conversation. They shut down. They back off,
Mm.
as opposed to leaning into that power and stepping into that greatness. And tears fall, sitting with it. And I asked them, what did you hear? And this is why language is important. They said, what I heard was when things get hard, I back down. And if you rewind this tape, that is not what I said. And here's the unlearning that needed to occur. What I said was, there is a pattern of when you experience your greatness, which presupposes that things are going well and you're in flow. When you realize it, it scares the shit out of you and you back off. This person is not a stranger to hard work. And here's the identity piece that we unpacked. There's a piece of their identity that is attached to the hard work and rebuilding something that has been collapsed or burnt to the ground or needs to be fixed.
Mm.
And when we pulled that apart in real time, that identity was allowed to die. And they are now able to step into that greatness and exist in that flow state when it shows up. But the language, the mind games that we play with ourselves never ceases to amaze me. Because as I'm giving that criticism, what they're hearing, and if we're not careful, we end up internalizing, is not the message intended.
Mm. And that, if you have the wrong message or it's not clear, can lead you in all kinds of different directions. So, coach, what are some of the ways that you get people to spend time with themselves? I took the pandemic as a massive opportunity. I'm a very social guy. I like to go out. But for some reason, the pandemic came around. I didn't mind being an introvert because I
Mhm.
spent the time with myself. So the time I would normally spend out socializing, I'm like, well, nobody's really doing that right now.
Yeah.
Why don't I dig into myself?
Mhm.
And what I found about myself was all kinds of those confusing messages or messages that I misinterpreted that
Yeah.
made me think or feel a certain way about myself or other people.
Right.
And then when I started to peel back those layers, it was almost as if I could describe it as a grounding. Like I felt
Mhm.
my feet touch the floor more. I felt that it is okay to believe that the thing that I followed for the first, at this point, whatever, 41 years of my life was the right thing to follow, but
Yeah.
that thing started to change.
Mhm.
And I started to listen to that. And it took me a long time to understand that my purpose had shifted away from what my initial dream was. Cause it was like, all right, like you did, Mike, right?
Mhm.
Checked off the list. Radio show, big time market. You were number one. Now what?
Mhm.
That's not it. But giving myself that time, which for me is mostly spent on my couch. I got this little corner couch in the corner of my house that has just become my favorite spot.
Yeah.
And I would write and I would think and I would just get in touch with myself. And it almost happened by accident,
Yeah.
just from the state of sitting there and uncovering things. So
Mhm.
I give that example, but you
Yeah.
do this every day at next level. So what are some of the other ways you encourage people to do that work to really find out? what mixed messages their subconscious is sending to them.
Oh man, that's so good. Mixed messages that your subconscious is sending to you.
A good hype man, coach.
Book,
Go.
bookmark that. Uh, you got to sit still. You know, it's not a matter of effort. It really isn't. It is a commitment to yourself to just sit. You've heard a lot of busy people, a lot of people that suffer, quote unquote, from anxiety and depression. You know, the less aware want to just go do yoga. I and what do you hear? I can't sit in silence like that.
Mm-hmm.
I can't meditate. It's too hard, right? Because the thing about meditation is what it's not. It is not a forceful exercise. The act of meditating is simply bringing yourself to a place where the ideas and emotions that come to you, you allow them to move through you. And you become okay with these ideas and with these emotions, and you begin to reconcile with them as opposed to resisting them or trying to fit them square peg round hole into this compartment of yourself that is both illogical and probably doesn't actually exist.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you can achieve that through physical activity, get out of your head and into your body. And that allows that process to take place in the background. You can do it with intention by just simply sitting still for a period of time. It's like holding a stretch. Okay.
Ah, yes.
So this is a great out. This just came to me. It's like holding a stretch. If you get into your hamstrings, bend over and touch your toes, or try to, and you just sit in that position right there at your edge for long enough, eventually the muscle will release and you'll get into a deeper, actually more comfortable position. However, you have to sit in that discomfort for a indeterminate period of time for that to take place. And the more often you do it, the shorter that feedback loop becomes and the faster you're able to get into that deeper, more comfortable position. That's that's what journaling was for you. I'm assuming free writing,
Yes. Hand. Mm-hmm.
just
With the 90
and
cent
just
big pen.
and eventually, right, your subconscious takes over, and instead of like the nonsense of I'm great, it's not nonsense, but uh the going through the motions of gratitude that we fall into sometimes. Oh, I'm grateful that the sky is blue. I woke up on this side of the dirt. I love my wife. You do that for long enough, and eventually your truth exposes itself. And it's these are the areas of my life that I know that I can be better. This is where I want to hold myself to better accountability. Like that stuff, the uncomfortable stuff, but the productive stuff starts to show up. And if you hold, I'll come back to the stretch. If you hold that stretch for long enough, you'll achieve the benefits of it. Where we cut ourselves short is right there before it releases. We stop. And then we convince ourselves, oh, it doesn't work. It's not for me. That's all bullshit. I need to go do something else. Insert whatever coping mechanism you already have, like the devil, right? And that's it, man.
Well, I love that. So I've been I don't studying might not be the right word, but how monks approach life.
Mhm.
Practice the art of detachment,
Yeah.
almost stoic in the sense that you can only control you.
Mhm.
And using that filter for myself when I was sitting on my couch, when I was just letting the subconscious go with this pen,
Yeah.
I understood that my interpretations of life are based on my life,
Yeah.
my experience.
Mhm.
So when I understood in talking about anger, where my anger came from, and really digging down deep into that, and this process that I mentioned, it was like a week and a half process of constantly, like after work, late at night, I got to schedule time for myself because I really got to figure this out because it's impacting my most important relationship. It's impacting my two most important relationships, myself and with my wife.
Yeah.
So giving myself that space and that commitment to find that breakthrough was excruciating because I had to face myself. But I kept at it because I knew on the other side was the result. And that all started, Mike, just from doing it one time. Like
Yeah.
getting to that point where you don't talk yourself out of advancing yourself. When you break through, even if it's just a little tiny nugget of a breakthrough, that first one gives you the confidence to do the second one. And then eventually you take on the big monstrosities of baggage that you carry with you from childhood.
Yeah. Mhm. That is what you're describing is the three-step process of progress always.
Mm,
Keep your promise, do hard things, and make yourself proud. And what ends up happening is now we are in the practice by virtue of the intentional adversity that one must go through to keep said promise in becoming a better version of yourself. We're creating a positive feedback loop where on the other side of that hard thing that is born of keeping that promise and the pride associated with it, it gives us the competence and the confidence to go back and do it again. And it becomes this reaffirming belief system that I am capable, I am competent, I can do this thing. And now we become more willing to chase higher and better versions of ourselves, as opposed to staring down the barrel of that gun that is your aspirational self and not knowing the
mm.
uncertainty of the gap between you and that next best version of yourself that keeps us where we're at.
I just love the way that you put that because that seems to be my awakening in the last 5 or 6 years, that there is a better version of me all the time.
Mhm.
So, you mentioned rewind the tape. That's one of the exercises I have in my communications course is specifically when it comes to your communication. Let's say you were having a coaching client, and at the end of it, you'll go back and you'll say, "Okay, what did I do well? What can I do better? Did I impact that person the right way? Did I say the right things?" And if it's like Tom Brady watching film, game film,
Yep.
we
Mhm.
have to do the same thing in our lives because you go back and you can make little adjustments. And the
Mhm.
better you get, the smaller the adjustments get. Like, for example, in Tom Brady's career, he would have like a throwing motion coach, and he's throwing a football thousands of times a week.
Right.
But every once in a while, his angle is going to be like that much off just by nature of things. So the coach would help him
Yep.
get his arm in that right position.
Mhm.
That's why I like the sports analogy, Mike, because it so relates to life. Like the process of performing in
Yeah.
sports, while they know the time and the location, we don't always know the time and location of when we're going to
Mhm.
perform. But it's the prep work that you do
Yeah.
to get you in the position that no matter when the performance is, you're ready to rock and roll.
It also shifts the narrative. Going back to language,
Mm.
there is a very distinguishable difference between something not being good enough and seeking opportunities to improve. Those are not the same thing. When you're receiving criticism taken negatively, it's so easy to convince yourself that you're not good enough or it wasn't good enough or whatever. It's way different than, okay, that got the job done. We won the game. But where can we improve? Going
Mhm.
back to the sports analogy, you're in the film room, right? The the Monday after a victory, and it's like, well, here's where you shit the bed in this coverage. If the quarterback had looked left instead of right, that's a touchdown all day.
Mhm.
Did did that play have a negative uh, re, uh, uh, a negative outcome on the game? No. And still, be that as it may, we can fix that going into next week's game. We need to fix that going into next week's game. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like not everything that can be improved needs to be on the backside or a reaction to something negative. Because here's the truth: better is better. And if it can be improved and you're not improving it, well, then you're settling for mediocrity.
Mm.
And that's not what winners do.
Mm-mm.
And that's a very tough pill to swallow. But it's really important as leaders and communicators that we make sure that those we are providing that criticism to, that feedback, that feed forward, that the intention comes from a place of this is where we can become better, not a place of not good enough.
Which I wanted it's just sitting so home for me, coach. And this just ties into what you do and why you're so good at what you do at, as your progress always and your next level performance consulting. So I'm a relatively new entrepreneur and I've had a structure in my career up until October of last year.
Mm-hmm.
October comes around, I get the chance to go to Europe for a month. I come back from Europe and I just start crushing it. Right, grabbing every single thing that I can. Another company that I own, Earn It All. We're doing all these projects, and it was great. My wife's company, where I do my communication coaching, doing that stuff. And it all kind of came to a halt because some of the things you do don't pay off. You
Mm-hmm.
spend a lot of time in entrepreneurship and you get nowhere. And I did
Yep.
that on like 4 or 5 projects and I got discouraged. So I
Mm-hmm.
almost had to unplug and detach, and I had some travel built in while my wife was working. So I had some time away to really think through these things and what am I and who am I and what am I actually trying to accomplish here? And I bring all that up because getting back in touch with myself again, what your one of your specialties is, coach, is so important
Mm-hmm.
to righting the ship so that you can get back in charge and say, okay, maybe I've been off track for the last 6 weeks trying to figure this out, but now I feel good in myself again. So now I can take the wheel of the ship,
Yeah.
the sails, and point the boat in the direction that I want.
Right.
Now, what are some of the barriers that you see that people run into when trying to get back in touch with themselves to command their ship?
Well, dude, I will give you my own personal example. Over the course of my career post Marine Corps, I've learned a lot of expensive, painful, and still valuable lessons along the way. Lost a lot of money, lost some relationships, and were I to hold those lessons against myself, we're not having having this conversation right here, right now. And the truth of the matter is, and this is something I teach my kids and I teach my clients, and I speak into my relationship with my wife because I am far from perfect as a husband and a father. There are no losses, just lessons. And when you reframe it that way, it makes you much more willing to readily accept the fact that not every idea is a home run. Not Not every client is going to create your windfall,
Mhm.
you know, and it makes you much more receptive to just the little wins, man. Like that. Yeah, that was painful. Yeah, it was expensive. But when I look to my left and I look to my right, I still have my family. I still have my health. All the things that are really important, I still have that.
Mm.
So I'm doing okay. It wasn't as costly. It wasn't unrecoverable. So you dust yourself off and you get back in the game, right? And
I
and and
see.
and sometimes you it's a forest fire and all you have is a cup of water, But even still, it can be overcome. It's not insurmountable. It's just like, "Ooh,
Yeah.
okay. I'll never do that again." Or, uh, I'll 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 do a little more homework before I make that decision. I'll have more patience with my decision making. My wife is my business partner and our general manager at Next Level, and you know, we're having a conversation. She's like, I don't know what you want me to tell you when you ask me what I think about certain things. And I was like, is that coming from a place like you don't think that I value what you have to say? That's one thing. Or you legitimately don't know how to answer the question. Totally different scenario. And what was born of that is I'm asking you because I know my tendencies. And it is really important from lessons learned that I investigate these critical decisions from multiple perspectives,
Mm.
even if the outcome is exactly what I thought it was going to be. At least I have the confidence, the certainty that I did as much homework as I could and explored as many secondary and tertiary outcomes as possible going into this decision. So it's not about you having the right answer. It's more often than not just an exploration of what might happen. And are we okay? Am I okay with those potential scenarios? And you have to be willing to have those challenging conversations so that you get back on the same page. It comes back to intentionality. It comes back to effective communication. Message intended, message received. Anything not that is shitty communication. Point blank period. That's as objective as it gets. So, I don't even know what question I was answering at this point, but it felt like that was the place I needed to go with
No, it was perfect. The follow-up
it.
is we're both very fortunate in that we married above our average. We have
Outkick my coverage, brother. 100%. 100%.
and is that I found that communication that you just described, it was almost I had to get out of my own way
Mhm.
because we naturally form judgments. You look at
Yeah.
someone down the street, that 2 million-year-old reptile brain says that person is a threat. You're assessing for threats because 2 million years ago, we didn't know what anything meant.
Right.
So that part of us, even though we've advanced knowledge and we
Mhm.
live relatively safe, that
Right.
knowledge hasn't translated to our survival instincts.
Mhm.
When those judgments kick in, you can communicate those judgments and they can cause real harm
Mhm.
in solid relationships. So for me, it was figuring out those judgments are really judgments of me, it turns out,
Yeah.
that I'm pointing at someone else.
Mhm.
So once I realized that, I was able to communicate way more effectively with Mrs. H than I was prior to that because
Yeah.
it's almost as if, like you said, the big difference I learned from meditation is just to let a thought be there.
Yeah.
Negative, positive, doesn't mean I have to say it, doesn't mean I have to believe it, doesn't mean I have to react to it. And just finding that space to do that in the middle of a conversation, especially a difficult one,
Yeah.
allows us, I think, Mike, to continue to bat above our average. And, you can apply this to your kids too,
Oh, yeah.
because you're teaching them lessons as a dad, as a man, right?
Mhm.
So how does that all work for you with your family unit to
Oh,
be able to
man.
communicate effectively?
So my wife and I do not shy away from altercation's the wrong word, from friction. We don't shy
Mhm.
away from friction. And we've evolved our communication to a point where even if and when it gets volatile, it's still respectful. Voices may get raised, F bombs might get dropped, but nobody's being disrespectful. And that's what's really important for our kids to witness
Mm.
in our relationship, that respect is maintained at all costs, even if I have to admit wrong. And on the other side of that friction, love still resides.
Yes.
We are okay. This is She's not always going to be my favorite person. I am certainly not always going to be hers, but the love and respect is always there. And that is that is something that it's on us as parents to make sure that our kids intuitively,
Mm.
because there's no way my 8-year-old son and my 60-year-old daughter could put words to that, but they know, even though they don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Totally no. Exactly.
So that's one thing that Nicole and I have, that I feel really blessed in my partner, that she's willing to do that work with me. And that's a standard that we hold ourselves to. That, yeah, I mean, do we want to move through that friction in front of our children? Is that a desire of ours? Absolutely not. And if we can do that out of eye out of their view, great. And still, if it needs to be settled right here, right now, we're okay doing it. I've cried in front of my children. She's cried in front of our children. We've raised our voices at each other in front of our children. But again, the through line of that friction is respect and love. There's no, I never put her down.
Mhm.
I don't tell her that she's less than.
Mhm.
And at the same time, and she has the same right, if you're fucking up, it is what it is.
Gotta talk about it. Gotta
We
call each
let
other
let
out.
let's figure it out,
Mhm.
you know? And that has been a very powerful mainstay in our relationship.
Well, it's
And
progress always as far as an intimate relationship goes, right?
mhm. Yeah, it does us no good to hide these things from each other. And my toxic trait is I will sit with shit
Mm.
for however long it takes for me to feel comfortable, whatever that means, articulating how I'm feeling. And where I applaud the shit out of my wife is she does not allow that to go any longer than it has to.
Mm.
And she calls it out right here, right now on the floor. Let's talk about it, because our relationship is stronger than my feelings.
Oh my god, bombshell right there. Yes. I love that. Because that is so true, because feelings are temporary.
Mhm.
Feelings come from, I think, something in the past that you've experienced that has emotionally affected you. Your body
Yep.
keeps score. Maybe you've heard that. I love that.
Mhm.
And that was like a huge realization for me, is that, let's say Mrs. H is saying something to me and
Mhm.
calling me out on my BS.
Yeah.
And I don't like calling me out on my BS. But there's some reason I don't like it, because my body is reacting selfishly to my
Ooh,
environment.
listen to that.
Yes, and that's
Yeah.
that's the key is to understand, like, right, having that understanding, like, you guys have your really through line of love and respect always, right?
Mhm.
That you know that that's your baseline no matter what, that
Yeah. This
unconditional love here.
this is painful, this is uncomfortable. I don't want to be here in this moment, in this conversation. Nothing about it is like I would 100% rather be doing something else. 100%.
Exactly, but you
And
just
and at
go
the
through
same
it.
time, I know, and so does she, I'm not being disrespected. I'm not being called out my name. And somewhere through all of that crazy is coming from a place of love.
Yes, and it can be done, and it
Mhm.
is done. You
Some
just
and sometimes it's messy.
oh, man.
It's far from perfect. It rarely goes, "Now look, you know I love you, so I'm gonna s" it doesn't
I'm
look
not gonna
like
rip you.
it doesn't look like that,
No.
you know? It doesn't. I really wish that, as we're talking about moving through these moments, that eventually you come to a place where it does look like that. But no, like, sometimes you just need to have it out, and that's okay.
Especially if you know how to have it out, like, that's that
Mm,
key, like, learn each other's rules, learn how to
mhm.
play fair, and I
Yep.
love that. Love and respect
Mhm.
always. So we got a couple minutes left.
Yeah,
This conversation, Mike, has flown by. Thank you for that. I definitely wanna have a bunch more with you. Just
100%.
insights are awesome. Let's talk about joy.
Yeah.
Let's go back to sometimes we as adults, especially
Mhm.
as guys, that
Yeah.
have a grind it, hustle attitude,
Mhm.
forget about fun. Like, that's
Yeah.
what I realized in my last 6 weeks is, man, I haven't been life is fun, and I
Yeah.
generally like life, but I haven't found those joyous moments that I get to just be joyful in and laugh and have a good time. So
Yeah.
how do you encourage your clients, of which you've counseled several thousand
Mhm.
leaders,
Yeah.
how do you advise people to find fun? How do
Oh,
you
it's
find fun, Mike?
oh, it's so funny. So, wisdom comes from weird places, and I'll never forget, and I have lived with this for almost 20 years. We had just got done with a really tough day at officer candidate school, and we are in the rack, lights out, and the cat next to me came out of the University of Florida. He's now a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps, Brian Taylor.
Mm.
And, we're a couple of weeks in, and everybody's wondering, like, am I just gonna do a tour? Am I gonna make it 20? Like, how long do I want to be a part of the big green machine? How long do I want to run with this gun club? And I remember, we're having that conversation, him and I, and I just asked him, I was like, "Hey, dude, how long do you think you're gonna do this?" And he just looks at me and he gave me one of the greatest gems ever. He says, "Man, I don't know, dude. I figure I'm just gonna do it till it's not fun anymore."
Mm.
And I said to myself, I don't think you understand how profound that actually is. And that's been my guiding light. I have a running tab in my mind of good days and bad days.
Mm.
And I make it my life's mission to have more good days than bad days. And I'm gonna do this thing until it's not fun anymore. I got back from Afghanistan and they wouldn't redeploy me without signing up for a tour in 29 Palms, which, I was not super jazzed about. So I was like, I'm not having fun anymore. I'm
Yeah.
gonna pivot and go do something else. So I went back to school and then I opened the gym. And then as that evolved, I was like, just the gym isn't fun anymore, but it's important. So I can't let that go. So what does the evolution of it look like? And here we are. I transcended personal training and became a performance consultant.
Mhm. Of which the fitness is such an important component, right? How your
Mhm.
body is
Absolutely.
how it's gonna resist the challenges, the mountain that you wanna climb, either
Yeah.
physically or metaphorically.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's where the specialization in fitness, healing, and mindset came from.
Mm,
It was born of, okay, if this piece on its own is no longer fun, intriguing, exciting to me, how do I make it so again? And that's where the evolution was born, was through that introspection, that thought exercise, and just leaning into my natural curiosity. So how do people find joy? You got to have that thing that is just yours. For me, it's podcasting.
mm.
I don't do it to make money. There is zero, yes, it's on brand, you know, but there's zero uh judgment against whether or not it makes money, it pulls in clients. These are the conversations, these high frequency narratives that I could discuss ad nauseum. And at the same time, I'm not willing to roll the dice and put a monetary metric against it for fear, if I'm being completely honest, that I fall out of love with it.
Mhm.
So again, I will continue to podcast until it's no longer fun,
Sure.
but you have to find that thing that is just yours. Because in the soul searching that I was doing last year, as we were getting HQ right side up in the aftermath of the pandemic,
Mhm.
was, damn, if it's not family and it's not this business, I don't have any hobbies. Training is who I am. So, yes, that's an outlet, but I'm going to do that no matter what. So, it doesn't have the significance or the sway that it once did when, oh, life is going to hell in a handbasket. I'll go work out. I don't do that anymore. And then I realized, like, what would I do if I didn't have any of this? What is that? What I came to was I would write books
Mm.
and I would podcast. So I got back on the mic, and this is the thing that is my own, that I'm not reliant upon anyone else for its satisfaction, and really fills my cup.
His podcast, Mike Anders, is called Progress Always. I made an appearance on it a few weeks ago. You can go
It was
check it
great,
out.
great conversation.
That's it. You have so many of those high frequency level conversations that listen to it because you're going to get so much that you can apply, just like you've done with us today, Mike. There's so many takeaways that I have personally. I'm like, yes, all this is great. So as we wrap up, like we did at the beginning,
Mhm.
give us some final closing words about taking yourself and making yourself a priority in thinking about progress.
Take your count. I'll give you a very practical exercise that I advise all of our clients to do in the very beginning, especially the ones that don't have themselves built into the schedule. Take out your phone, open your calendar, and I don't care if it's tomorrow, 2 weeks from now, or 6 months down the road. Go to the next day that isn't jam packed with your life's obligations. And on that day, make a date, make an appointment with yourself
Mm,
to do with whatever you want, and make it reoccurring and non negotiable. Just like you wouldn't have missed this podcast, this conversation, you need to hold yourself to that same level of commitment. And that's a great place to start. I don't care if you use that time to get a pedicure. I don't care if you use that time to work out. I don't care if you
go
use that
bowling
time.
if you want to.
Yeah, I don't care if you use that time to take a nap. It doesn't matter. That time needs to be for you. And it doesn't matter if it's 4 o'clock in the morning, high noon, 9 o'clock at night, where it is on the day also doesn't matter. But you need to make that appointment with yourself, make it reoccurring, and make it non-negotiable. And when you start doing that consistently, it becomes part of who you are. And your life will begin to mold itself around that non-negotiable. And just watch what happens. I guarantee you'll be better for it.
I love it. So, in summary, the very beginning, Coach Derz, at Coach Derz, Derz on Instagram, says, if you think a Lamborghini might be your choice, go drive one.
Mm-hmm.
If you think a 6,000 square foot home is for you, go look at one, stand in it, feel it. See if that is for you. You want to book a first class ticket to try it out, see if that lifestyle is for you, do it. If you want to go bowling every Thursday, do it. And stick to that commitment, because that is where you will see the results. And again, Coach, I think you'll agree with this. You're just looking for that first breakthrough. And that first breakthrough becomes a second breakthrough. And then they happen faster and faster and faster because you're exercising that mental muscle to be able to do it.
Yep. The feedback loop gets tighter.
No doubt.
Keep your promise. Do hard things.
Every day.
Proud.
Exactly. So you can check out Coach on Instagram or nextlevelpfc.com. That is Mike's coaching program right there for you. I will be links in the show notes as well. Mike, again, this was fire. Thank you so much for being here. Let's do it again soon.
I'm all for it, man. I appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Cheers. This is Equal Matters. Don't forget, rate, review, subscribe, and share, because you know someone in your life needs to hear from Coach Derz. We'll see you next time. Good night.